Hands on the car! Now! Sergeant Victor Kane's shout hit Lena Brooks before she even turned around. The slap of his palm on her shoulder came next, hard, deliberate. She steadied herself and spoke clearly. General Lena Brooks, United States Joint Task Force Pacific. ID in my left pocket. Kane didn't care. Save the story, he said. His voice was full of authority and something darker. Officer Mateo Cruz stood behind him, nervous, unsure whether to act or observe. Kane shoved Lena's arm higher until pain forced her to breathe through her teeth. "That laptop yours?" he demanded. "Yes," she answered. "It's government property." He laughed like it was a joke. "Sure it is. Before we go deeper into this story, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and give this video a like. It helps more people hear stories that matter." Lena had left a Department of Defense briefing minutes earlier, the only black woman in the room. She had done this walk countless times. But today, a false call from a stranger turned routine into danger. Kane's hand searched her pockets roughly. "You think your badge makes you special?" he said. "No," she replied. "It makes me accountable." Her calm tone seemed to irritate him more. He pushed her again, her palms scraping hard against the surface behind her. She felt warm blood gather but didn't react. Instead, she quietly pressed the side of her watch. A soft vibration confirmed activation. Silent trigger. The military distress system, GPS, ID, and live video now streamed to Joint Task Force Command. Cruz noticed her composure. Something about her made him hesitate. His father had been fired years ago for exposing bias within the department. That memory hovered in the back of his mind. Kane barked at him. "Keep your eyes open, rookie. These types know how to play victim." Cruz swallowed, unsure how to respond. Lena met his eyes for a brief moment. "Officer Cruz, you have 4 minutes to change your life." Her voice was calm, low, certain. He frowned. "What?" She didn't repeat it. She just held his gaze until he looked away. Kane opened her bag and found a sealed folder marked Top Secret. "What's this, huh? Spy work?" "National Defense," she answered. He smirked. "Not today. It's not." He tried to switch off his body cam, but the light stayed red. "Damn thing won't shut down," he muttered. Cruz glanced at it. "They updated the policy last week. Auto-lock for all active encounters." Kane cursed under his breath. He aimed his frustration at her. "You people think the rules don't apply. The rules are why I'm still standing here," she said softly. The gun came out next. He pressed it close enough for her to feel the metal. "Scream and I'll say you resisted." She didn't blink. "You think I'm afraid of you?" she said quietly. "You're afraid of what happens when the truth comes out." Kane hesitated for a second. Just enough for Cruz to see the tremor in his hand. Alcohol and anger made a dangerous mix. Cruz took a step forward. "Sarge, maybe we should check her ID." "You questioning me?" Kane snapped. "No, sir." "Then stay where you are." Lena's phone, hidden inside her hoodie, was recording audio. Every word, every tone, every pause. She remembered her father, a veteran, beaten by police when she was 12. That memory kept her voice even. She knew how these moments could spiral. Every heartbeat counted. The silent trigger timer was still running. 3 minutes. Soon. Help would come. But she needed to survive until then. Kane gripped her shoulder again. "You think your stars mean something out here?" "They mean I earned them," she said. "Can you say the same about your badge?" His jaw tightened. "Don't test me." "You already failed," she replied. Cruz's breath caught. He'd never seen someone talk to Kane that way. She wasn't angry. She wasn't scared. She was deliberate, precise, like someone who had lived through worse. Kane's radio buzzed. Dispatch tried to confirm his status. He ignored it. "You're going to regret this," he said. "Not me," Lena replied. You will. He frowned. What did you say? 4 minutes, she repeated softly. That's all it takes to lose everything. The silent trigger clock hit 4 minutes and 38 seconds. The next voice came from behind them. Drop the weapon! Sergeant! The command was sharp, controlled, unmistakably military. Kane froze. 4 armed military police officers advanced with precision. Their leader, Special Agent Nathan Cole, speaking clearly. Step back and put your hands where I can see them. Cruz moved first, raising his hands. Kane hesitated. Cole aimed directly at him. Now! The gun clattered to the floor. Cole scanned Lena's wrist tag. General Lena Brooks, JTF Pacific. He confirmed. You're safe now. Ma'am. She nodded. I was never unsafe. Just underestimated. Kane tried one last defense. She was breaking in. She attacked me. Cole ignored him. Your camera says otherwise. He turned to Cruz. You good? Officer? Cruz nodded faintly. Yes. Sir. I saw everything. Kane's shoulders sagged as the cuffs locked around his wrists. His face shifted from authority to disbelief. For the first time. Silence filled the space. Lena stood straight. Blood still marked her palm, but her voice was steady. This wasn't confusion. She said quietly, it was a decision. Cole met her eyes and nodded. We'll handle it. I already did. She replied. The feed from her watch still streamed live. Her command center had the footage, the voices, and the proof when they walked her out. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. What mattered was already recorded. What mattered was the truth, captured and untouchable. The red light on Kane's camera was still blinking, evidence that even when someone tried to turn justice off, it stayed on. 12 years old. That was the first time Lena Brooks learned how fast respect could vanish. Detroit. 7 Mile and Schaefer, her father, a Vietnam veteran, was driving home from the auto plant when police stopped him for fitting a description. She remembered the sound before the pain, his ribs cracking under a baton, his voice begging her to stay in the car. She didn't cry that night. She memorized every detail instead, the smell of oil on his jacket, the words they used to justify cruelty. That memory built the steel inside her, years later. That same steel held her still when Sergeant Kane slammed her against the pillar. But strength alone didn't erase the sting. The difference now was power. She had earned hers, and he was about to lose his. After the military police took Kane away, Lena sat in the interview room with Captain Alicia Morales from Internal Affairs. Morales was calm, professional, a woman who had faced her own share of bias in uniform. General Brooks, I need your account in sequence, she said. Lena gave it clean and direct, no embellishment, no emotion, just the facts. She told her about the call, the confrontation, the silent trigger activation, and the attempt to disable the body cam. Morales listened carefully, pen tapping lightly against her notepad. And Officer Cruz? She asked. He hesitated. Lena said, that hesitation saved him. Maybe his conscience still works. Morales nodded. We'll see if he tells the same story. Lena's tone softened. He will. He's his father's son. Morales looked up. You know his father? I read the reports. Lena replied. He tried to expose bias 15 years ago. Lost his job for it. Meanwhile, in another room. Cruz sat alone, hands clasped, heart racing. He wasn't sure if he was angry, ashamed, or relieved. When Morales entered, he stood. Sit down. Officer Cruz, she said. You're not under arrest. He sat, exhaling. I didn't know what to do. He said quickly. He's my sergeant. He gives the orders. Morales leaned forward. And when the order's wrong? Cruz hesitated. I thought if I spoke up, I'd lose my job. Morales studied him. You're right. You might have, but silence costs more than a paycheck. He lowered his head. She told me I had 4 minutes to change my life. I didn't understand what she meant until now. Morales tapped her pen once. So what did you do? He told her about the bag search, the gun, the trembling hands. She stayed calm the whole time. He said, didn't flinch once. Morales paused. Did he try to turn off his camera? Cruz nodded. Yes. But the update blocked him. And her watch? It was recording. I saw the light. Morales nodded. You'll testify to that? Yes, he said quietly. I will. Back at her office. Lena washed the dried blood from her palm and wrapped it in gauze. The pain was dull now, but the memory of the shove lingered. She looked at the silent trigger app on her phone, the recording still active, saved in military servers beyond reach. She replayed the audio, listening to Kane's words. Save the hero story. She stopped the clip. You'll be famous for this one, she whispered, but there was no satisfaction in it, just exhaustion. She called her daughter, Zoe. I'm okay, she said softly. Just a long morning. Zoe's voice cracked on the other end. Mom, I saw the video. It's everywhere. Lena froze. What video? Someone posted it on a news site. They're calling it the garage incident. She pulled up her browser and saw her own face on screen, framed by yellow caution tape, body cam footage, leaked within hours. Headlines flashed words like racial profiling, officer suspended, federal assault. The comments were split between support and hate. She turned the phone face down. Baby, she said quietly, remember what I told you? Never let anyone else tell you who you are, Zoe whispered. I know, Mom. But it's not fair. It never is, Lena replied. That's why we keep showing up. 2 days later. A brown envelope arrived at her office marked Internal Review, Confidential. Inside were printed copies of 3 old police reports, all tied to Kane. Each one documented a complaint of racial abuse. Each one dismissed for lack of evidence. The initials VK appeared in the officer field every time. Morales called her that evening. We're reopening those cases, she said. One of them involves a veteran named Robert Brooks. That name ring a bell? Lena closed her eyes. My father. The silence between them said more than words could. Morales continued. Looks like your father filed the complaint in 1989. It was buried by his captain. Guess who trained him? Kane's father. Lena leaned back in her chair. History repeats when no one stops it. Morales agreed. This time, it stops. Kane sat in holding, head bowed, waiting for his union rep. The weight of exposure was sinking in. His body cam had survived. So had hers, he muttered to himself. She set me up. But deep down, he knew better. Nobody set him up. He had walked into it, thinking his badge was armor. Now it was evidence. He tried to call Dorothy Walsh, the woman who'd made the false report. She didn't answer. Her voicemail played her trembling voice. I didn't know she was military. I just thought she looked out of place. That line would replay on news channels for a week. When the internal investigation became public, the department scrambled to contain the damage. The chief held a press conference promising transparency and accountability. Reporters shouted questions about Lena's rank, the video, and whether Kane would face charges. The matter is under federal review, the chief said. But the world had already judged. Protesters began gathering outside the precinct with signs that read, "Always recording and turn the light red." By the third day, over 50,000 views became 2 million. People saw what Lena saw, the fear disguised as authority, the quiet defiance of a woman who refused to break. Cruz testified to investigators without hesitation. She told the truth. He said, "She saved me from becoming like him." When he left the station, the cameras followed him. He didn't run from them. "I want to make something clear," he said into the microphones. Sergeant Kane's actions don't represent all of us, but silence does. I won't be silent again. It was awkward, unpolished, but genuine. That clip went viral, too. By evening, Lena's silent trigger feed had become a rallying cry. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, bruises fading. Zoe brought her tea and sat quietly beside her. "You could sue them," Zoe said. "You'd win." Lena smiled faintly. "I'm not suing. I'm building." "Building what?" "A fund," Lena said, "for people who can't record their truth. I'm calling it Silent Trigger." Zoe nodded slowly. "That's smart." Lena looked at her daughter. "It's necessary." She stayed up until midnight drafting the mission statement. Every voice deserves proof. Every truth deserves a witness. Donations poured in within hours. By morning, $500,000 had been pledged. Reporters called it a new standard for accountability. She didn't care about headlines. She cared about change. By the end of the week, Captain Morales called with one last update. "We found something else." She said, "Crews recovered a personal USB from Kane's locker. 3 deleted case files. We're restoring them." Lena exhaled slowly. "There's always one more layer." "Isn't there?" "Always," Morales replied. "But this time, it's ours to peel back." Lena hung up and stared at the small scar on her palm. It would heal, but the mark would stay. It wasn't a wound anymore. It was a signature, a reminder that silence isn't safety, and truth doesn't whisper. It records. The third day after the arrest, Lena Brooks woke up before dawn, unable to quiet the noise inside her head. Headlines still repeated her name. Every show dissecting the garage incident like it was entertainment. But she wasn't thinking about cameras or protests. She was thinking about what came next. Kane hadn't just assaulted her. He'd tried to erase her, the same way men like him had erased voices for decades, now that the files were recovered. She knew it wasn't about one encounter. It was a pattern. 3 buried cases, 1 officer, years of silence. She poured coffee, opened her laptop, and pressed play on the unedited footage. The moment his voice barked, "Hands on the car." She paused, not out of fear, but precision. She wanted to remember every inflection, every breath. When he pressed the gun to her head and said, "Scream, and I'll say you resisted." Her pulse quickened again. Trauma doesn't leave quietly. It lingers like smoke. She clicked stop. She needed to face it head-on before the courtroom did. Later that morning, Captain Alicia Morales called. "The DA's office is moving fast. They're filing federal charges, abuse of power, assault on a federal officer, and evidence tampering." Lena listened, expression still. "And Cruz?" she asked. "He's cooperating fully." He turned over Kane's backup drive. "We found video fragments of prior assaults, including one that matches a dismissed complaint from 2018. Lena nodded. "So he was a repeat offender." Morales sighed. 3 times, maybe more. The union shielded him. "They always do," Lena said quietly. Morales hesitated, then added, "The department's in damage control. They want a statement from you. Maybe something that calms the crowd." Lena almost laughed. "They want me to soothe the city after one of theirs pulled a gun on me?" "Yes," Morales said softly. "They're afraid the protests will turn violent." Lena's voice hardened. Then maybe they should start listening instead of talking. By noon, federal investigators arrived to collect physical evidence. Lena signed off on chain of custody forms, each one a reminder that justice required paperwork as much as courage. She gave them the original Silent Trigger recording, knowing it was already duplicated across secure servers. One agent, Nathan Cole, paused before leaving. "General, you know what comes next, right? Public trial," she said. "Cross-examination, character scrutiny, and retaliation," he added. She met his eyes. "I've been under fire before. This is just a different uniform." Cole nodded with quiet respect. Then I'll see you on the stand. Across town. Kane sat in a holding cell, his temper gone flat. He hadn't slept in 48 hours. The shock was giving way to regret, or something close to it. His lawyer told him the evidence was airtight. Body cam, audio, federal witness. There was no spin. They want a plea. The lawyer said, 2 years, maybe less. Kane stared at the table. You think I'm going to prison for doing my job? You went too far. The lawyer replied, They always say that when it's political. Kane muttered. She wanted this. But even he didn't believe it. Deep down. He remembered her calm, her eyes steady even with a gun at her head. He'd seen defiance before, but never like that. It wasn't fear. It was control. The kind of control that made him feel small. Meanwhile, Officer Cruz sat before a review board. A row of stern faces watched as he gave testimony under oath. Sergeant Kane was in command, he said, voice trembling slightly. He initiated the stop based on a false report. I advised him to verify ID, but he refused. Did you attempt to de-escalate? A panelist asked. Yes. She identified herself clearly. He ignored it. Why didn't you intervene? Cruz looked down. Fear. Every rookie knows what happens when you cross a superior. The chairwoman leaned forward. And what happens now? Now I cross him, Cruz said quietly, and I'll live with that. The room fell silent for a moment before the chairwoman said, Thank you. Officer, that will be all. That night. Lena received an anonymous email. No sender, no subject line, just one sentence. Check Kane's locker again. She forwarded it to Morales, who dispatched a team immediately. What they found confirmed everything. Another hidden USB drive, this one containing voice memos from Kane himself, drunken recordings, rants about keeping order, mocking complaints, and one chilling confession. You can't change the system because the system is us. Morales played it for Lena over the phone. Neither spoke for a while. Finally, Lena said. That line needs to be heard in court. It will be, Morales replied. But you should know, it's going to make enemies. By the fourth night, protests surrounded San Diego police headquarters. Crowds carried signs reading, Silent Trigger, Loud Truth. Cameras rolled non-stop. Lena watched from her office window, not as a symbol, but as a soldier studying terrain. She knew public rage could turn quick and blind. She drafted a statement, short and deliberate. This is not war. This is accountability. Keep the peace. Let the truth speak. She posted it on her official page. Within an hour, 50,000 shares. The tension didn't vanish, but the message hit home. Calm, without surrender. A day later, Cruz asked to see her. They met in a secured conference room. No cameras, no press. He looked nervous. I wanted to apologize. He said, she shook her head. You did what conscience told you when it mattered. Too late, he said. Not for you. She replied, you can still make it count. He handed her a small envelope. Kane gave me this the night before everything happened. Said if anything ever went wrong, to destroy it. Inside was a folded piece of paper, an address, a storage unit in El Cajon. Morales authorized a warrant within hours. Inside the unit, investigators found shredded documents, backup drives, and photos linking several officers to falsified reports and extortion schemes. The corruption wasn't just personal, it was organized. Lena stared at the evidence table later that night and said, this started with one call about a car. Now it's an empire of lies. The next morning, federal prosecutors added new charges. Conspiracy and obstruction of justice. The department scrambled to distance itself. Kane's name became shorthand for everything wrong with their culture. Cruz resigned quietly. signing paperwork that ended one career but started another. A local university offered him a position as an anti-bias instructor. "You can still serve," Lena told him, "just not with a gun." He nodded. Maybe that's for the best. For Lena. The days grew heavier. Reporters camped outside her home. Some called her a hero, others a disruptor. She ignored both. Her focus stayed on the silent trigger fund, which had surpassed $2 million in donations. Each contribution message told a story. People beaten, silenced, dismissed. She read them all. Some nights, she cried. Other nights, she didn't. But she always answered one truth to herself. Justice only matters when it changes behavior, not headlines. At the federal courthouse, Morales briefed her on the upcoming hearing, Cain's pleading guilty to lesser charges. But the judge might overrule the deal. His confession tape and Cruz's testimony changed the tone. Lena nodded. Good. Let him face sunlight for once. Morales looked at her with quiet admiration. You never lose your composure. Lena smiled faintly. You can't lead soldiers if you panic in noise. And if you're the one under fire, then you hold still until they run out of bullets. That evening, she visited her father's grave in Detroit by video call, a ritual she kept every month. It's happening. Dad, she said softly. They tried to break me the same way they broke you. But I had a witness this time. The camera light flickered on her face. She let herself breathe. Just once, without command or restraint. They'll say it's justice when the verdict comes. But justice started the moment I pressed that button. As the sun rose the next morning, she stood before the courthouse steps surrounded by reporters. Someone shouted, General Brooks, do you forgive Sergeant Cain? She paused before answering. Forgiveness isn't the goal, she said. Accountability is. Without it, nothing changes. Cameras flashed, microphones stretched forward, and she walked inside. The trial was about to begin, but for Lena Brooks, the reckoning had already started the moment she chose not to scream. 4 minutes and 38 seconds after she pressed silent trigger, the garage turned from a trap into a courtroom. Special Agent Nathan Cole's voice cut through the tension. Sharp, commanding, absolute. Drop it. Sergeant. Victor Cain froze. The barrel of his Glock hung in the air before slipping from his grip. The clatter echoed louder than the words that followed. Hands behind your head. Cain obeyed, his face drained of color. Officer Mateo Cruz stood motionless, torn between shame and relief. Lena Brooks didn't move. Her breathing was calm, steady. The discipline of a soldier who'd waited her whole life for accountability to walk through the door. Cole scanned her wrist ID, the green verification light confirming what Cain refused to believe. General Lena Brooks, Joint Task Force Pacific, he said aloud. The sound of her rank hung heavy in the concrete silence. She turned slowly, meeting Cain's eyes. This wasn't confusion, she said evenly. It was a choice. He tried to speak, but the words never came. Cruz took a half step back, realizing the entire scene. Every insult, every order, every moment of restraint was still streaming live to JTF Command and now mirrored in the body cam archive he couldn't erase. Cole secured Cain's cuffs himself, an uncommon gesture of protocol that carried quiet condemnation. You just assaulted a federal officer, he said. Cain muttered something about mistaken identity. Cole didn't answer. He turned to Cruz. Officer, I need your body cam ID. Cruz handed it over, hands trembling. You're not under arrest, Cole added, but you will make a statement today. Cruz nodded, almost grateful for the order, when the reinforcements cleared the area. Lena finally exhaled. Blood from her torn palm had dried along the edge of her thumb, the sting dull but insistent. Cole gestured toward a medic. She shook her head. Finish your sweep first. He studied her expression. Calm. Deliberate. No hint of self-pity. You know this footage is going to ignite a storm, he said quietly. Good. She replied. Some fires need to burn. Down the hall. Kane sat in the back of a cruiser, cuffs biting into his wrists, the camera still rolling. He whispered to himself. She set me up. Cruz, standing nearby, heard it and said under his breath, No, you set yourself up. It wasn't defiance, just clarity, truth surfacing after too long buried. At headquarters, Captain Alicia Morales waited with her team from Internal Affairs when Cole escorted Lena in. Every uniform in the room straightened instinctively. Morales extended a hand. General Brooks, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Lena shook it, firm and brief. Circumstances reveal character. Captain. Morales nodded. Then let's make sure the record matches the reality. They played the footage together. No commentary, no questions. The video spoke for itself. Kane's tone, the pressure of his hand, the blood, the command that came too late, all preserved. When it ended, Morales leaned back, silent for a long moment. You kept your composure through all of that? Training, Lena said. And memory? Morales glanced at her. From where? Detroit. My father learned the cost of silence the hard way. Morales understood without asking for details. Cruz arrived an hour later, escorted by Cole. He looked different, pale but resolved. Ma'am, he said to Lena, I need to say this in front of you. I froze. I didn't stop him. She studied him for a moment. You didn't help him either. No, ma'am. Then you did something right. He sat, relief mixing with guilt. Morales began recording his statement. Cruz told the story exactly as it happened. No embellishment, no excuse. When he described the moment, Lena said, You have 4 minutes to change your life. Morales stopped writing. She really said that? Cruz nodded. Yes. And she was right. Outside. The city had begun to react. Reporters gathered near the courthouse. Someone had leaked the first 30 seconds of the video to local news. By evening, millions had watched the shove, the gun, the calm voice saying her name and rank. The caption read, General assaulted by police during parking garage stop. The department scrambled to respond, issuing a brief statement about an ongoing federal review. It didn't matter. The story had already left their control. Lena refused all interviews. She gave one line to the press through Cole's office. Justice does not need a microphone. It needs proof. That single sentence replayed on every channel by nightfall. She didn't want celebrity. She wanted change. And change doesn't trend easily. Yet the calls kept coming. From the governor's office, the Pentagon, civil rights groups, even a veterans network raising money for the Silent Trigger Fund. She didn't answer most of them. Instead, she focused on the internal investigation. She sat through hours of playback, identifying timestamps, ensuring every second was preserved. She corrected the record where details blurred. Don't let them edit the silence. She told Morales, that's where truth hides. Meanwhile, Kane sat in an interrogation room across the hall, face swollen with frustration. You think they'll make me the villain? He asked his union rep. You did that yourself? The man replied. Kane leaned forward. You don't get it. I've been doing this 22 years. I know how these people lie. The rep didn't answer. The evidence didn't need debate. The red light on his body cam had stayed on. The same technology he used to control others now held him accountable. By midnight, Cruz filed his resignation letter. He left it on Morales' desk with a short note. Thank you for letting me fix one thing before I left. She read it, folded it once, and said quietly, That's the first honest exit I've seen in years. The next morning, Lena stood before an internal review panel. The department wanted her to confirm protocol, to verify the activation of silent trigger. She gave them everything: timestamps, transmission routes, verification codes. One colonel asked, "Why didn't you wait for backup?" She looked directly at him. "Because I've spent 20 years waiting for backup that never came." The room went quiet. The colonel didn't ask another question. Hours later, federal agents transferred Kane to detention. He kept his head down as cameras flashed. Lena watched from a distance. Not out of satisfaction, but closure. Morales approached her. "You should go home," she said. "Get some rest." "Rest doesn't rebuild systems," Lena replied. "But it reminds you why you're fighting," Morales said gently. Lena gave a faint smile. "Then I'll rest when the red light never turns off again." That evening, she returned to her office. Her palm still ached where the skin had split, but it no longer felt like injury. It felt like testimony. She opened her inbox, hundreds of messages, from soldiers, parents, strangers. One line repeated across many of them: "Thank you for not staying quiet." She closed the screen and stared at her reflection. The story wasn't hers alone anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd been told to save the hero story and chose to press record instead. When Cole called later, his voice was lighter. "It's official. Charges confirmed. Federal custody secured. You're clear to testify when the date's set." "Good," she said. "Then we move forward." "How do you feel?" he asked. She paused, choosing her words. "It's not relief. It's recognition." The system blinked, and this time, it stayed awake. As she hung up, she thought about her father again. The night the police broke his ribs, the silence that followed. The years she spent proving that silence wasn't strength. Now, standing in her uniform again, she whispered the same words she had told Cruz. "You have 4 minutes to change your life." Then she looked at the small scar forming across her palm, a red line turning pale, and said quietly to herself, "And I used mine well." The sun hadn't yet risen when Lena Brooks opened the email from Internal Affairs. The subject line was simple. Subject, Case Kane. Update, inside. Captain Alicia Morales had written one sentence. Recovered USB verified. All 3 deleted files restored. Lena read it twice. 3 deleted reports, each from victims whose names never made it past the complaint desk. She clicked the attachments and watched them appear one by one. The first was a man stopped at a gas station for looking nervous. The second, a teenage girl accused of stealing her own purse. The third made Lena's stomach turn. An Army reservist assaulted during a welfare check. His injuries misreported as self-inflicted. The same language, the same handwriting, the same badge number, V. Kane. Lena sat back in her chair, closed her eyes, and whispered, "They never saw you coming." Then she picked up her phone and called Morales. "We need to talk about what happens next." An hour later, Morales met her at the precinct. She looked tired but steady, holding a manila folder. Federal court set the preliminary hearing for Monday. She said, "But there's something else." She opened the folder and laid out the photographs from the restored files. These victims filed internal complaints. All 3 were buried by the same supervisor. Lena studied the signature. "Deputy Chief Rollins," she said. Morales nodded. "He's retiring next month. The department wants to keep his name out of it." Lena looked up. "No, he's part of it. You don't bury complaints like these by accident." Morales exhaled slowly. "I knew you'd say that." She handed her a small envelope. "You'll want to see this too." Inside was a printed confession. Kane's handwriting, scrawled in pencil, mailed from his holding cell. "I did what I was trained to do. I was wrong long before I met you." Lena stared at the paper for a long moment. There was no satisfaction in it, just clarity. She folded it once and set it aside. "We keep moving," she said. Morales nodded. "You'll testify next week." Lena's tone sharpened. "Then I want every minute of that video played in full. No edits, no cuts. The silence stays." Morales gave a faint smile. "I already pushed that order through. Back home." Lena called her daughter. Zoe answered with the anxious energy of a 16-year-old who had grown up too fast this week. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby," Lena said. "Just long days." Zoe hesitated. "People at school keep talking about it. Some kids said you embarrassed the city." Lena smiled gently. "They're wrong. I held it accountable. There's a difference." Zoe's voice cracked. "Why do they hate us for being right?" Lena paused, her voice softening. "Because truth changes comfort, and people fight to protect their comfort," Zoe whispered. "I wish I was there." "You are," Lena said. "Every time I don't bow, you're standing beside me." That night, she sat at her kitchen table surrounded by donation letters for the Silent Trigger Fund. In just 5 days, the total had passed $1 million. Notes came from teachers, nurses, veterans, single mothers, people who had stories of their own but no recordings to prove them. Each letter felt heavier than money. It was evidence of a nation learning to listen. Lena drafted a public statement to launch the fund officially. The Silent Trigger Fund will provide legal and technological aid to victims of bias-based policing. No one should need rank to prove they were telling the truth. She hit send, and the post spread across the country before she finished her coffee. By the weekend, the department had suspended 6 officers and opened an internal audit of over 200 body cam files. The governor issued a press release announcing a statewide review of use-of-force complaints. The momentum frightened the people who had built their careers on silence. Anonymous messages began arriving in Lena's inbox. Half threats, half warnings. "Stop before it's too late. You're making enemies you can't see." She ignored them. Fear was familiar terrain, and she refused to live inside it again. Sunday night. Morales called with one more update. Cruz just finished his deposition. He turned in Kane's spare phone. "What was on it?" Lena asked. "Recordings," Morales said. He talked to Walsh before the stop, told her to stick to the story. That's witness tampering. He called her before? 5 minutes before. Morales confirmed. "We have timestamps." Lena closed her eyes for a moment. "He was setting the stage before he ever saw me." "Yes," Morales said quietly. "He thought you were just another report he could control." The next morning, as the city prepared for the federal hearing, protesters lined the courthouse steps holding signs that read, "We see you now." The air buzzed with camera shutters and chants. Lena walked through the crowd without sunglasses, without security. She wanted people to see her face, calm, unapologetic, unafraid, inside. The marble floors echoed beneath her steps. Morales met her at the elevator. "Ready?" "I've been ready since Detroit," Lena said. Inside the courtroom, the press filled every bench. The prosecutor presented the footage, the confession, and Cruz's testimony. When it was Lena's turn to speak, she stood behind the witness podium. Back straight, voice steady. Sergeant Kane's actions weren't an accident. She said, they were the result of a culture that rewards fear and excuses bias. "I didn't press Silent Trigger to save myself. I pressed it so no one else would have to beg for proof." The judge watched her closely. "General Brooks, you've served your country for 20 years. What did you feel in that moment?" Lena paused. "I felt tired of proving I belong in a place I've already earned." Her words lingered, soft but unflinching. The courtroom stayed silent for several seconds before the prosecutor continued. When the hearing ended, reporters rushed forward. One shouted, "General Brooks, What do you want to happen now? She stopped at the doorway. Reform, she said simply. Not revenge. Then she walked past the cameras, sunlight flashing against her face like a spotlight she didn't ask for. That evening, Morales visited her at home. It's over for him, she said. The judge denied bail. He's facing federal time. Lena nodded slowly. 2 years won't change the system. No, Morales said, but it starts something. Lena reached for the envelope on her desk, the one with Kane's confession, and handed it to her. File this where others can read it. She said, it's not about punishment anymore. It's documentation. Morales smiled faintly. You really never stop leading, do you? Only when the mission's done. Lena said, before bed. She called Zoe again. I watched your statement online, Zoe said proudly. You looked calm. Lena laughed softly. Calm is practice. Courage is the choice. I want to do what you do someday, Zoe said. Then remember this. Lena replied, when they push you, stay grounded. When they lie, stay steady. When they take your voice, record the silence. When she finally turned off the light, she sat for a moment in the quiet. The hum of the city outside felt different now. Still chaotic, still imperfect, but alive with awareness. Somewhere, another woman was pressing record for the first time. Another officer was rethinking what a badge meant. And another mother was explaining to her daughter why truth sometimes hurts before it heals. Lena whispered to the darkness. We're not finished. Then she looked at the scar on her palm, faint but permanent, and smiled. This time, she said softly, we left proof. The courtroom was silent except for the clicking of cameras as the federal trial began. Sergeant Victor Kane sat at the defense table, jaw tight, eyes down. His lawyer whispered constantly, but he barely listened. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. The red light from his own body cam had become his judge and jury. Across the aisle, Lena Brooks sat upright in uniform, ribbons pinned neatly, her left hand resting lightly on a notebook. The scar across her palm had healed into a thin white line, but the memory behind it hadn't faded. She wasn't here to destroy him. She was here to finish what he started. The prosecutor began by playing the video. It filled the room, the command, the shove, the gun, the calm voice that said, General Lena Brooks, JTF Pacific. No narration, no music, just truth, raw and unedited. When the clip ended, the courtroom stayed quiet. The judge cleared his throat. I believe we've all seen enough to understand the gravity. Kane's attorney stood, Your Honor. My client has accepted responsibility. He acted under stress, responding to a citizen complaint. The prosecutor cut in sharply. That's not stress. That's bias. And bias doesn't wear out. It hides until it's caught. The judge didn't interrupt. He let the silence do its work. When it was her turn, Lena took the stand. She swore the oath and looked directly at the jury. Her tone was calm, her rhythm deliberate. This wasn't the first time someone saw me as a threat, she said, but it's the first time the truth had a witness who couldn't be silenced. She explained the silent trigger system, how it worked, how it transmitted every second in real time. It's not about technology, she said. It's about accountability. The camera never flinched, even when he did. The prosecutor asked how she managed to stay calm. Training, she answered, and experience. I've led missions under fire. I know what panic sounds like. His wasn't fear of danger. It was fear of discovery. Every word landed like a hammer on stone. Outside, crowds filled the courthouse plaza. Veterans, students, and civil rights advocates stood side by side, holding posters with the silent trigger emblem, a simple red circle lit from within. Reporters described it as the new symbol of reform, inside. Kane's lawyer called his client to testify. He spoke softly, eyes glassy. I made a mistake. He said, I judged before I verified. I thought I was protecting the public. The prosecutor stepped forward. Protecting who? Sergeant? The public? Or your prejudice? Kane's shoulders sagged. For once, he didn't have an answer. The trial lasted 18 days. Testimonies from officers, analysts, and experts painted a consistent picture, patterns of misconduct, ignored warnings, and a culture that rewarded silence. Cruz's testimony was the turning point. He admitted everything: the hesitation, the cover-up attempts, the secret recordings. When asked why he didn't intervene sooner, he said, because I was afraid of losing my job. But I realized I'd already lost something worse: my integrity. The courtroom fell silent again. Cruz looked at Lena. She gave him a small nod, the kind given from one soldier to another after battle. By the second week, the case had become a national event. News networks replayed the footage hourly. Politicians weighed in. Civil rights groups demanded legislation. Public trust in local law enforcement dropped 20% in 10 days. The governor announced emergency reforms. All police cameras would now operate under independent digital verification. No more manual control. California became the first state to mandate 40 hours of annual bias training for every sworn officer. Some called it overreach. Others called it overdue. For Lena, it was the first real sign that something was shifting. On day 16, Kane broke down on the stand. I was wrong, he said quietly. Not just that day. For years. He admitted falsifying past reports, coercing witnesses, and burying complaints. When the prosecutor asked why, he replied, because the system let me. That statement echoed across every headline the next morning. It was the first honest thing he'd said in months. On the 18th day, the verdict came: guilty on all counts: abuse of power, assault on a federal officer, tampering with evidence, and conspiracy to falsify reports. The judge sentenced him to 2 years in federal prison, citing cooperation but emphasizing betrayal of duty. When the gavel struck, Kane closed his eyes, whispering words no one could hear. Lena didn't look away. She'd seen plenty of endings, but this one felt different. Not vengeance, but truth taking its place. After court, she stepped outside into a sea of cameras. A reporter called out, "General Brooks, what will you do next?" She paused before answering. "Rebuild trust," she said simply. "That's harder than winning wars." Her words spread faster than the verdict itself. Within hours, the Silent Trigger Fund received another $500,000 in donations. Colleges invited her to speak. Veterans groups sent letters of solidarity. For once, the story wasn't about tragedy. It was about structure, proof that integrity could still ripple outward. One act at a time. Later that evening, she sat in her living room watching the coverage. Zoe came and sat beside her, curling up quietly. "Is it really over?" she asked. Lena shook her head. "For him. Maybe. For us. Not yet." "Are you angry at him?" Zoe's voice was small. Lena thought about it. "No," she said softly. "I'm angry at what shaped him. Anger fades. Systems stay until someone forces them to change." Zoe leaned against her shoulder. "You did?" "No," Lena corrected. "We did. Everyone who refused to look away did." A week later, Congress announced hearings on federal policing standards, referencing the Silent Trigger case by name. What started as a garage altercation had turned into national policy. A new federal grant, the Brooks Amendment, was introduced to fund independent camera oversight in every precinct nationwide. Morales called her that night, voice trembling with pride. "You just changed the country." Lena. She laughed quietly, one garage at a time. Letters from across the nation flooded in. Some from officers who thanked her for forcing reform. Others from families who finally felt seen. She read everyone, saving a few in a folder labeled proof. Among them was a handwritten note from an inmate in federal custody. She recognized the name instantly. Kane. It was short, almost childlike. I saw the footage again. You were right. I was afraid. I'm sorry. She stared at it for a long time, then folded it and placed it beside her father's medals. The next morning, she stood at the podium of the San Diego Civic Center, delivering a speech to cadets. Strength, she said, is not how loud you shout. It's how long you stand when they tell you to kneel. The auditorium stayed silent, listening to every word. The badge is not armor. It's a promise. Keep the red light on, even when no one's watching. When she stepped away, the room erupted in applause, not out of celebration, but out of understanding. That night, as she drove home, the city felt different. The same streets, the same skyline, but the air carried something lighter, maybe awareness, maybe respect. She didn't need to define it. She only knew that somewhere. Another officer would hesitate before turning off a camera. Another woman would press record before fear could silence her. And another daughter would see her mother stand unbroken and learn what justice really looked like. For Lena Brooks, that was enough. A month after the verdict. Lena Brooks walked back into the same parking garage where everything had begun. The air was still, the concrete cool beneath her steps. The pillar where her blood had dried stood exactly as it had that morning, unchanged, indifferent, honest. She ran her fingers along the faint, rust-colored stain, the one that had started a national reckoning. No cameras followed her this time. No crowd waited for a statement. It was quiet, and for the first time in weeks, she welcomed it. She took out her phone and snapped a single photo. It wasn't evidence anymore. It was memory. This isn't where I was hurt, she whispered. This is where I decided who I still am. Outside the garage. Sunlight cut through the haze over San Diego. Bright and sharp. Life had moved forward. The protests had ended. The laws had passed. The department was under new leadership, and training programs bore her name. The silent trigger fund had grown beyond anything she imagined. Hundreds of cases reopened, thousands of officers retrained, and ordinary citizens equipped with technology that turned fear into proof. She never asked for fame. But her name had become a symbol. Some admired her. Others resented her. She accepted both. Because leadership never asks permission to do what's right. At the federal courthouse. Reporters waited for her one final time. The Department of Justice had just announced the Brooks Directive, a federal reform requiring real-time recording across all state and local law enforcement agencies. Cameras could no longer be muted or erased without dual authorization and independent oversight. The program was already being called Lena's Law, when a journalist asked how she felt about it. She smiled faintly. Names don't matter. She said, integrity does. But if putting my name on it helps protect someone else, I'll live with that. Later that afternoon, she stopped by her father's grave in Detroit on a secure video call from her laptop, as she often did. We made it. Dad, she said quietly. It took 30 years, but they finally heard you. She imagined his calm nod, the one he always gave before a hard day's work, you used to say. Don't let them take your truth. Lena. I didn't. I recorded it. Her voice softened. I wish you could have seen it. That night. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the flicker of a candle she'd lit for the fallen, the soldiers, the victims, the voices never recorded. Zoe came in wearing her school hoodie, carrying 2 mugs of tea. Mom, she said softly, they talked about you in history class today. Lena raised an eyebrow. Already? That was fast. Zoe smiled. Our teacher called you the woman who made silence expensive. Lena laughed. That's better than what the news called me. They both smiled, sitting together in the soft glow. After a long pause, Zoe asked, "Are you proud?" Lena looked at her daughter, really looked, into the same brown eyes that carried both innocence and awareness. "I'm not proud of what happened," she said, "but I'm proud of what we did with it." The following morning, she returned to the Pacific Heights garage one last time. She placed a small brass plaque on the pillar beside the faded bloodstain. The engraving was simple. "Proof lives here." She stood in silence for a moment, then saluted, not for herself, but for everyone who had stood their ground when truth demanded it, as she turned to leave. The faint hum of a car engine echoed behind her. A young officer parked nearby stepped out, clearly recognizing her. "General Brooks?" he asked nervously. She nodded. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, your case is why I joined." She studied him for a moment, then said, "Then do it right. Keep the light on." He nodded firmly. "Yes, ma'am." As she walked away, she knew he would. In the months that followed, the Silent Trigger Fund expanded nationally. Renamed Project Red Light, a network connecting body cams, civilian devices, and AI timestamp verification under one unified system. Reports of unrecorded incidents dropped by half. Civil rights groups credited her with restoring a level of public trust no policy had managed in decades. But Lena stayed out of the spotlight. She declined talk shows, turned down awards, and focused instead on mentorship programs for young officers. Justice, she often told them, isn't a courtroom victory. It's the quiet decision to do right when no one's filming. On the one-year anniversary of the incident, she stood before a group of cadets at the San Diego Academy. The room was silent, filled with anticipation. "Every one of you will wear a badge," she said, her voice calm but firm. "That badge isn't protection. It's a mirror. It reflects who you really are when the light hits you. Some will flinch. Don't be one of them." She paused, scanning the room. The law doesn't need heroes. It needs witnesses. The applause that followed was steady, respectful, not for her name, but for the truth she had made impossible to ignore. That evening, she returned home and watched the sunset from her porch. The sky streaked with gold and crimson. She thought of her father, of Cruz, of Kane, of every person who had chosen silence over courage and everyone who hadn't. The world hadn't changed overnight, but it had begun. And beginnings, she knew, were how revolutions truly start. Zoe joined her outside, resting her head on her shoulder. "Mom, do you ever wish it hadn't happened?" Lena thought for a moment. "No," she said softly, "because pain without purpose is tragedy, but pain that leads to truth, that's legacy." As night settled, she looked once more toward the city lights of San Diego, their reflection flickering faintly across her window. Somewhere, a red light blinked on a dashboard, steady and unyielding, proof that the system, once blind, was still watching itself. Lena smiled faintly, whispered to the quiet room. Justice isn't the noise after the verdict. It's the silence that follows when the world finally listens. Then she turned off the lamp, and for the first time since that day in the garage, she allowed herself to rest. Thank you for watching and standing with stories that speak truth to power. If this story moved you, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe for more real stories that matter. Your voice helps justice be heard. Keep the light on, and never stay silent when truth needs you.